Welcome to our third session in our online course, Peace in Sport. The name of this session, Doing It Right. I hope you have found the previous sessions interesting and meaningful. In this session, we will dig deeper and try to understand what is the ideal use of sport for peace, or in other words, doing it right. We will first discuss the value base of a Sport for Peace program, and then we will take a more critical look of that industry. In order to achieve a culture of peace, we will take a look at the use of sport as a tool for conflict transformation and the relations between sport and conflict prevention. We will also discuss whether sport is an intervention or a transaction. Finally, we will mention social activism and the importance of role modeling in any given project. So let's start with the question, what is the value base when considering using sport as a tool for peace? When we use sport as a tool for peace building, we need to take into account the value base of the group involved. Assuming that since sport is global and universal, an intervention can be easily replicated within different context is sometimes a mistake. A model that examines, appreciates, and acknowledges the value base of the society at stake will better serve its clients. This what turned a project to be a culturally sensitive, as discussed in the two previous sessions. When professionals in the field of sport and peace were asked about the future of sport and peace building, they agreed that they would like to see a stronger commitment by relevant players in the field, as well as more venues, both virtual and physical, to connect more effectively the diverse stakeholders active in sport and peace. The diverse stakeholders. The sport and peace community is putting an emphasis on its diversity and cultural differences also when it comes to the values that we assume are shared across the globe. Generally, conflict is defined as a state of disagreement between persons or group of persons. The major causes are usually differences in opinion, prejudice and discrimination, belief and access to valued scarce resources. Conflict is an important part of human existence and a natural part of our daily life. Conflict can either be positive or negative, depending on how it is handled. Conflict can emanate from various sources within us: school, home, and community, or the society at large. The way communities deal with solving conflict internally and externally ranges dramatically. Using sport as a tool to mitigate conflict and promote a culture of peace is heavily driven by context and local nuances. Therefore, it is important to understand the culture of solving conflicts within a community and within its context before encouraging an intervention that uses sports as its vehicle. Now let's take a look from a critical eye. A dilemma that Professor Gal Harmat has shared relates to an aid package that was sent to a war zone and was dropped to the ground via airplanes. The aid package contained food, medical supply, and necessary commodities. Those aid packages were found to be lethal when they killed some of the locals that were expecting them and were crushed under their weight. Now, does that make the aid workers killers? Assassinators? Another dilemma is warlords who take control over outside aid and create a black market. By providing aid, one is assisting a corrupted local regime. What should we do? Should we cut the aid? One of the questions we should be asking is how to use sport in the most effective way in conflictual situations. In any use of sport for peace is an intervention, then how do we make sure that we are doing things on the most sensitive way and still answering the needs of the community? How to make sure that we are not sustaining dependency and rather creating a strong grassroots community-led organization? Recent years have been increased attention paid to the connections between sport, education, and conflict resolution. A myriad of organizations now mobilize sport to support peace initiative and peace education, often based on the notion that sport offers a fun and inclusive social activity that can build relationship between different groups. In your reading materials, you have seen Darnell's article, which presents a critical approach about the sport, peace, education nexus. Darnell argues that while significant opportunities for peace education through sport do exist, so does the prospect of sport exacerbating conflict, dominance, and violence. As a result, he suggests a more critical and cautious understanding of sport for peace. In particular, a commitment to understanding and engaging with the political and social backgrounds of a given conflict should accompany any notion that sports necessarily supports the resolution of a conflict. Although it is clear and somehow intuitive that sports bring many advantages to peace building, there should be also recognition of a dark side of sports, the one that encourages violence, creates dependency, or imposing a non-organic solution, to name just a bunch. However, having said all of that, this should not prevent organizations from advocating the benefits of sports in peace building and post-conflict support. Moreover, the experts on the field agree that sport is a contributive tool and not general solution. Sport is not a magic wand, but it can provide a neutral and natural platform for learning. When we look at sport as a tool for conflict transformation, I would like to dig deeper and find a better understanding of how sport really contributes to a culture of peace. One of the definitions of conflict transformation that I like is the process by which conflicts, such as ethnic conflict, are transformed into peaceful outcomes. It differs from conflict resolution and conflict management approaches in that it recognizes that contemporary conflicts require more than the reframing of position and the identification of win-win outcomes. The very structure of parties and relationship may be embedded in a pattern of conflictual relationship that extend beyond the particular side of conflict. Conflict transformation is therefore a process of engaging with and transforming the relationship, interest, discourse, and if necessary, the very constitution of society that supports the continuation of violent conflict. In a nutshell, it means creating a culture of peace that all participants take when facing a conflict and do internalize. At this point, we all in agreement that sport has the ability to teach skills of conflict resolution to participants. The question we would like to ask, is sport really effective when it comes to conflict transformation? Isn't sport only one of various components that define its culture? How can sport encourage building a culture of peace? In Queen Philip's research on girls' soccer, she observed that the girls realized when someone was when someone was having an argument with someone else and that it wasn't helping the team. So they grouped together and tried to mediate the conflict. She believed that it's not about being afraid of conflict and just keeping everyone happy all the time. It's about encouraging the girls to deal with the conflict when they arise, because those are growth experiences. Those things will transfer outside of sport, because that's what you've got to do when you start working. Another example can be found at the Football for Peace program in Israel and Palestine. The program follows a unique value-based coaching methodology, which uses a holistic model of coaching whereby participants intrinsically learn fair play, good relations, and citizenship through sport. Spiritual, moral, social, and cultural development is learned through the physical learning, by doing and following the example set by positive role models in the form of trained coaches, teachers, local youth, and community workers and volunteers. Their methodology is divided between peace building on and off the soccer pitch. Off-pitch activities include the promotion of key skills and citizenship without the need to use specialized off-site facilities. This is achieved through activities such as orienting, which is core values and principles of trust and respect can permeate. In this respect, leaders can promote the development of the core values, whereby children can improve their own learning and performance and work with the others to solve problems collaboratively using verbal and non-verbal communication skills. On the soccer pitch, the aim of most standard training schedule is to enhance specific skills alongside the development of technical and technical understanding. Participants learn to work and play together in groups and teams. The program's coaching manual has been designed as a guide for coaches who recognize the potential of soccer as a medium through which to teach positive personal values that lay foundations for enhanced inter-community relations. It has been piloted in Israel and Northern Ireland, both societies divided across religious, cultural, political, and social lines. It has also been adapted for different contexts, including for development purposes in Africa, peace education on the Korean Peninsula, and for social justice inclusion events in Europe, such as the Football for Peace versus Homophobia campaign. The Football for Peace coaching program highlights the social attributes of sport in such a way that those who participate not only develop sport-specific knowledge, but most importantly, also consciously adopt, practice, and endorse the fundamental principle of fair play and good citizenship. Another example is Football 3, used by Street Football World. Football 3 is a unique way of playing football that is changing lives across the world. It is based on the principle that the basic values of fair play, gender equality, teamwork, and respect are just as important as football skills. Named after its three halves, a pre-match discussions, football game, and a post-match discussion, Football 3 incorporates key life lessons into every match. In mixed gender teams, players collectively decide on the rules before the game. Following the match, they reflect on their behavior and the behavior of their opponents, with points awarded for goals as well as for fair play. As Football 3 is played without referees, players must learn how to resolve conflict themselves through dialogue and compromise. Since its origins in Medellin, Colombia, Football 3 has been further developed by Street Football World Network members around the world into a comprehensive methodology to address a range of social topics such as gender equality, health, and of course, peace building. Football 3 empowers young people to take responsibility for their action and treat others fairly. They learn to value communications and mutual respect, both on and off the pitch. These are three examples that use sport not only to create a better understanding of the other side, but to go beyond and nurture a culture of peace within the participants through the power of play. When we speak about sport and conflict prevention, we might be a little bit more cautious. Can we go one giant step forward and suggest that sport has the ability to prevent conflicts from happening? Can sport contribute to conflict prevention in the same way that the European Union was formed in post-World War II? Keidal, Badakai, and Sansai suggest the possibility of utilizing the values of sport in creating understanding, tolerance, and respect for human dignity, development of moral values, and social integration as a vehicle for creating peace among nations. If nations can achieve these qualities, they argue, then conflict can be minimized and global peace can be guaranteed. The influence of sport on character formation and social cohesion has direct bearing on peaceful attitudes. The development of emotional fitness, self-esteem, need for recognition, sense of belonging, and feelings of anger, hostility, and aggression are all met through participation in competitive sports. The sports environment, starting with the athletes, coaches, umpires, spectators, and even vendors, should all portray peace and act in a manner that peace can prevail. To prevent conflict and achieve global peace, all stakeholders must develop the capacity to detect conflicting situations among nations and develop strategies in sport to deal with it before it erupts. What do you think? Is it utopian? Is it realistic? Next question I would like to pose is sport an intervention or a transaction? At the end of the day, any external involvement in a given conflict situation can be considered as an intervention. It is intervening in the so-called natural course of group that are involved. But as we know and understand, those interventions are necessary, and if done in the right manner, can be extremely important to a conflictual situation. And that's the topic of our session. What if those interventions are more transaction? In other words, what if those interventions may create a facade or reducing the level of conflict when in fact they are used to sustain the power dynamics? What if those interventions are a way of commercial transaction? Giulianotti argues that in recent years, a wide variety of organizations, notably the UN non-governmental organizations, have used sport as an interventionist tool to nurture peacemaking across divided communities. His article located sport for development and peace projects within their historical context and as significant elements within the emerging global civil society. He follows by suggesting three ideal type models of SDP projects, namely the technical, dialogical, and critical. Each model is examined through its core objectives and paradigmatic methods. The models can be used to analyze other peacemaking and development fields. The first two models are most influential and common among existing SDP projects. The critical model is being perceived from its potential benefit. In a different article, Giulianotti has examined this field through a critical lens and suggests four ideal types within the SDP policy domain that tend to be associated with specific institutions. First, the neoliberal social policies, as embodied by private commercial interests such as transactional cooperations and forms of corporate social responsibility. Second, developmental interventionist policies associated with non-governmental and community-based organization. Third are strategic development policies that are associated with national and international governmental organizations. And fourth are social justice policies associated with new social movements and critical NGOs. His paper concludes by arguing for a more sophisticated understanding of a sport policy capabilities, a fresh focus on social justice issues, and a critical review of existing power dynamics. This approach is making sure that using sport for peace building, as per Giulianotti, should be viewed within the power structure and the local, national, and international dynamics. Now, the last piece of today's session will be dealing with one of the ways that has proven to be successful worldwide in engaging the community. And this is social activism, and specifically create local role models who can lead the desired change. As a reminder, today's session is doing it right. Whether it is the sport coaches, the community leaders, or external activists who work together with the community to create the desired change, using role models is a best practice. In his TED Youth video, Mac talks about why he raises money for soccer balls for refugees and children in war zones, and how he thinks soccer can bring people together. At the age of 9, Mac was inspired to send soccer balls to kids in war zones around the world. With a little help from his family, Mac has achieved something quite astounding. In the past 2 years, Mac has built a website, raised funds, arranged for the Australian soldiers to take soccer balls to Afghanistan, delivered soccer balls to the children of refugees in Australian detention center, as well as many countries around the world. As a guest of Rotary, Mac has spoken to 33 schools and over 11,000 students about why he thinks soccer balls can be an instrument for peace. Although external to his communities, his social activism is contagious. Lindsay Hauer and Jason Rogers create a healthier and safer world through the power of sport and play, as part of the organization they are involved in called Right to Play, which I'm happy that one of our participants has experience working with that organization. This organization and those specific to illuminate the power of play to transform individuals, communities, and countries, encouraging play as a way to foster peace. Right to Play uses local role models to enhance the health, education, and well-being of youth at risk around the world, marginalized communities, and active conflict zones. We have concluded our third session. Let's take a quick look on what has this session covered. We started by understanding what is the value base when considering using sport as a tool for peace. As academics, we took a closer critical look on the use of sport for peace and suggested what are the weak spots or the dark side of sport that shouldn't be ignored. We also covered some best practices that use sport as a tool for conflict transformation and took a closer look on what allowed them to further enhance the participants' approach to conflict. We also toyed with the notion that sport can play a role in conflict prevention. A question that we posed was whether the use of sport is an intervention or a transaction. In other words, who are the outside benefactors? Who benefit from that? Lastly, we talked about the importance that social activism and role modeling play in successful sport for peace initiatives. Thank you all very much.